Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. And welcome to the first ever session of Mooting Club, an all-new initiative from Blackstone for 2015. It's nice to see so many people here. It's been wonderful to have so much interest as well. We're really looking forward to seeing you all over the semester as we go along. Since it's the first session, we thought it would be a good idea to start off a little bit about who we are and a little bit about what this is. So, Sam's ready for this next slide, and I definitely am. So, that's Sam and I'm Chris.
You can see who picked the pictures there.
Yes, that was me about that. Absolutely, no. We intend this to be, as this might indicate, a bit of a fun experience for everyone, because what we realised is that mooting is scary. When I first started it, I did open mooting in my first year of the JD, and I walked up to a friend who I think is in her about 9th year now, doing a choir, and said, "What's mooting?" She said, "Chris, it's probably the hardest thing you'll ever do." And I went, "Oh, mine's on Tuesday, can you teach me about it?" And she said, "Well, look, there's this site that's on LexisNexis that tells you what the law is. Hallsbury's online." And I said, "Oh, does that tell me how to do a moot?" She said, "No, not really, good luck." So, 3 days later, frantically going about it, I ended up in a court, sweating more than I ever had in my life. It was coming off my forehead and down my face. It looked like I was crying at one point, which was unfortunate, but I got through it. And what I found was that I really enjoyed it, that it was a great experience once it was over. And what that meant was that I really, really wanted to keep doing it as well. Sam, as that indicates, is the world's best oralist.
That means putting it a little bit highly. But I did well in the Jessup last year for Canada.
Sam's very good at mooting and very good at speaking and convincing people, and I hope he convinces you to stick around. But I have had a lot of fun since I did my first moot. I've taken part in the first year mooting that followed that. I've done open mooting last year. And just midway through last year, Sam and I attended the Cutting Moot, which is about a contract arbitration. That was in Melbourne. We got flights paid for and accommodation by the law school, which is happening again this year, which we'd like some of you to go to.
Which I guess really gets us into why we're doing this. And of course, one of those is that you do get to travel off to Melbourne, to the Gold Coast, to Washington and Canada in my case. So other than all the other brilliant benefits of mooting, free trips, get into it.
Absolutely free trips. We've got grants from Blackstone, grants from the Guild. We want to give you money to go places and have fun. That's part of what this is about. But before we get to that stage, this club is really about teaching you what mooting is, how to do it, and how to have fun doing it as well. Because unlike a lot of other universities, UWA has never really had a culture where people can get engaged, can be trained in competitions before you have to throw yourself in and sink or swim.
And you can see that in Chris's story, which is the same as my story, which is the same as everyone else's story. Everyone sort of just gets thrown into these mooting competitions without much of a chance to work out what they're about. And if you get knocked out in the first round, you'll be in the same boat next time around and next time. And it's really hard to build up that consistency and get that enough experience to work out what you're actually meant to be doing. So that's part of what we're trying to address, hopefully.
One of the other really great things that comes out of mooting is your marks get better as well. Because this teaches you a lot about what it is to write an answer to a problem question. But it teaches you that on a more advanced level about, well, how am I thinking through this? What are the strategies I'm taking on in this case? And it also gives you a sort of treasure hunt mentality about looking through judgments to find ratio that you didn't think was necessarily there to make better arguments.
And the other point to make is it's semi-practical experience. You do get used to standing up in front of a courtroom-like setting and talking to people who at least look a little bit like judges. And what that means is that, well, the first time I stood up in front of a court, because of all my experience, I only mostly made an idiot of myself. Hopefully you guys can also aspire to that high standard.
I constantly do that. Yes. So that's what we're here for, and that's why we really want to run this club, because we want to help you out and get better at mooting. We want to make it something that UWA can be really, really proud of.
So then, in terms of what we're actually going to do here, the plan is to have these sort of meetings on a fortnightly basis, and over the course of a couple of hours, we'll try and give some lectures on various points of mooting, how to go about it, how to deal with specific types of issues that might arise. We'll have some discussions about things, and hopefully we'll also get some guest lectures in along the way as well, from former mooters, from practitioners, from whoever we can get, basically. And hopefully along with that, we'll get the chance to put on a couple of practice example moots for you, so you can see what good mooters look like and get some ideas about that. And most importantly, we want to give you guys a chance to get involved yourself. That means we're going to be running some workshop-style sessions where you can get a chance to start off small, make a couple of submissions the next fortnight, and then hopefully by the end of it, we can have full-blown moots every fortnight.
And this isn't just about people who are very new to mooting as well, although those are the people we really want to target in this program. For anyone who's competed in Blackstone competitions before or external competitions, what we will be running in parallel to these sessions is judge training. So looking at mooting from the other side, where you're being trained by people like Renee Barker and Camilla Anderson, two people who have judged national and international competitions before, who are members of the staff here. You'll be able to go and learn what it is to judge a moot, which I've found when I've done it is a really, really good way of realising what's persuasive and what isn't, and finding out how you can be better as well. It will also mean that we'll bring you back together and you'll be able to give advice to people who are new to mooting, that you can be involved in those sessions to help out, but you will also get to moot as we move through the semester.
Yeah, so if you are sitting there and thinking that this all sounds very basic, please come and talk to us afterwards and we'll work out where we can go with that. Any questions on the basic stuff?
From that reaction, I'm going to put more animal pictures in these. Is that right? Good. Right. So, does anyone want to ask anything before you jump in the sands bit? Beautiful.
Right, yeah. Right, so try and cover 3 quick things today. I don't intend to keep you guys too long. This is an introductory lecture. We all know that you need to go home after half an hour and don't have to take any notes. So first I'm going to give 2, key points that I want you to think about advocacy when you're doing it, when we're going through these things. I'm also going to talk about, hi newcomers. I'm also just going to go through a couple of examples of common types of moot questions you might run into. It's not going to be an exhaustive list. There's going to be overlap between them once you actually get into it, but hopefully it'll be a bit of help. And then we're also going to talk about workshopping those problems for next session so that next week you guys get the chance to give a 4 or 5 minute submission on something. Right, so the first point I want to make about advocacy, mooting, everything in that area is that it is subjective. It's cliche to say it, but it's an art, not a science. What that means is Chris and I, and hopefully a few other people, are going to be up here talking at you quite a lot about what we think you should do, what we think you should not do, what's worked for us and what hasn't. All of that's guidelines, nothing more. The most important thing is that you develop your own style, your own way of going about it, without persuading people, and your own way to enjoy it. Which is the next point, that you shouldn't do it. Okay. For the first point, and this is a little bit cynical, but if you're enjoying it, you're probably going to be more persuasive. I know the few times that I've judged, if a person's really passionate about something, they're having fun, they're engaged, I get engaged, and that's when I'm the most open to being persuaded. But less cynically, it's also fun if you're having fun, and that's, I think, something we law students forget sometimes, that we are allowed to have fun in a law degree. And while by no means I'm not saying that every law student, when they get up to moot, should try and be a comedian, you might have noticed we're not very good at that. But it doesn't mean that you can't draw out the amusing parts of a question. For example, when we were doing the Kirby moot, there was this random line buried in the facts that when this person had a mental breakdown and she was trying to sue for mental harm, the reason we know she had a mental breakdown was because she was found wandering around Taronga Zoo in a dressing gown in the middle of the night. And so Chris and I would take every chance we could to throw that in when we were mooting. Oh, so when she was found wandering around Taronga Zoo in a dressing gown, every opportunity you can, throw something like that in, get a smile, get a laugh, have some fun. I honestly think that's how I ended up with the Best Oralist title from Jessup last year, is there was a somewhat dry question about who owns this ancient relic that had been dredged up from the depths, and I turned it into a story about pirates, Captain Henry Morgan in Jamaica in the 1600s. Everyone just seemed to have a lot of fun with that. That seemed to work well for me. So then, just to give you a brief note before we get into the common moot type examples, the workshop next fortnight, what we plan to do is we'll give these few examples and then we'll get you guys to give a brief submission on one of them. Pick either side, pick both sides if you want to do both, whatever works for you. But aim for 2 to 3 main points that you want to make and no more than 4 minutes, probably closer to 3. Put it together and hopefully that'll give you guys a chance to firstly stand up, get into that formal mindset and also start practicing actually talking the law at people in that formal moot type setting. I don't think we intend to have judges actually questioning you at that point or any of the scarier parts about mooting, so hopefully it's a chance to dip your toe in and see how you feel about it.
Right. And it's going to be a chance to engage with others as well. We'll likely split you off into smaller groups. You'll be able to get feedback from people who you're doing it with, and we'll wander around as well to chat about how it's going to go.
Exactly. Right, so talking about the types of moot problems that you might get, one of the more common ones is where you've got a relatively settled law and you're just talking about how it actually applies on facts. So these are, the word reasonable comes up an awful lot. You're going to have a relatively settled piece of law. The test is going to be something about reasonableness or excessiveness or necessary, those sort of things. And then you're just going to have a great big argument about how it actually applies to the facts. For example, this is the one we went with, you are allowed to use force in self-defense. That's if you believe force is necessary to defend yourself or another person and you don't go over the top, essentially. So our hypothetical scenario, on Tuesday night, Farmer Bob was on his way back from checking on the sheep when he heard rustling and footsteps heading back towards his homestead. Farmer Bob remembered that his good friend Shearer Steve was robbed by a group of vagrants at night point a couple of months ago. And he was also worried about his wife Margaret, who was home alone just finishing up supper. So he quickly loaded the shotgun he always carried with him for stray rabbits, of course, pointed it at the bushes where he heard the rustling and yelled, "If you don't come out on the count of 3, I'll shoot."
Farmer Bob was at 2 when a man stepped out of the bushes about 3 metres away from him holding a knife in one hand. The man said, "Give me your car keys and I'll leave." Farmer Bob was about to reply when he heard the homestead door open behind him. Thinking he was beset by a gang, Farmer Bob fired at the first man, saw him drop to the ground and spun to face behind him. And all that was there was his little wife, Margaret, standing at the open door, having come out to check on the racket. Farmer Bob and Margaret rushed to administer first aid to the man who just shot, and he later died in hospital, unfortunately. Farmer Bob is being charged with manslaughter on the basis that he used excessive self-defense. What do you think? What arguments would you make? If you were the prosecution, and this was, say, an appeal when he'd already hadn't been, I suppose, convicted. Good word there. Hadn't been convicted, the prosecution had appealed, which incidentally doesn't happen that often, but go with it. What would you say? Why was this excessive?
Because I know trying to get answers from a crowd and the lecture's like drawing teeth.
We're not actually lecturers. We're all friends, right?
So you would want to have that argument about, firstly, was it reasonable for Farmer Bob to hear a door opening behind him when he knows that it's only Margaret home alone there, and to immediately assume that he's being set upon by a gang of vagrants? Have the argument about what he knew, whether this one incident with Shearer Steve a couple of months ago was really enough for him to jump to that mindset. And then you're also going to have to talk about whether his response was excessive, either if he thinks someone's behind him or if he doesn't think someone's behind him. Even if he thinks there's someone behind him, does that mean that he needs to shoot the guy who's just standing there not doing anything? Those are the sort of arguments you need to have in an application of facts. You really need to take those facts, apply them, and try and cast them in the light that, he was the ordinary man in a difficult situation. He didn't make a good decision, but it was a decision within the law. To the other end, he was reckless, he's done something wrong.
So, who thinks it was fair enough to shoot him? Come on. Any bloodletters out here? Thank you, Richard. Why?
Well, he was obviously in a situation where, given past history, you can't see behind him. It's a natural instinct to be worried about what's behind him. You can't see. So, yeah,
fair enough. Anyone else on the other side there? And about 20 people have said, "Oh, Harry."
Well, you gave him warning. You said, I will shoot you. So the guy
Can I do that?
But anyway, he said, I will shoot you. So the other guy knew he had a gun and that he was willing to fire. And then the vagrant then approached him and threatened him. So
fair enough. What could you expect?
Exactly.
So I look forward to seeing you guys nut that out in a fortnight.
Yeah. Try not to kill anyone.
But a similar type of situation is where you have a relatively settled law, but the facts aren't just the run-of-the-mill, they're new, they're novel, they're extreme. And then we start getting into a little bit of policy questions about how the law should apply in these areas. And so, for example, it's pretty well established, if you take something that's someone else's, that's stealing, that's bad, that's wrong. So imagine we have Teresa Oblong, who is an avid gamer. She signs up to an online game where, in exchange for real money, you can purchase virtual goods. Shady Slim, a hacker, finds a way to exploit the game's code to take items from other players. He can then sell them on for virtual money, and there's a market for that virtual money on eBay.
Teresa's finished her virtual home and furnished it with decorative knickknacks. Using the exploit, Shady takes these, like the cat he is, and sells them to other players for virtual currency. So, let's have a little more engagement if we could. Do you reckon that Shady should be charged with stealing? Why or why not? Is it stealing when you take something that doesn't really exist? Sam?
No.
No, good. Let's go further.
Out of jurisdiction.
What if it was a Western Australian video game? Yeah,
Assume that there was a Western Australian server.
This is what we get from law students, isn't it? Right. You're going to love the consumer law. No,
We scrapped that.
we did actually think we anticipated it. But, do you reckon he should be charged with stealing here? Let me ask you,
I think it should, because he's technically stealing money, because the money became virtual stuff. And since Shady hacked into the game, stole the virtual stuff, he's essentially stealing money.
Yeah. So it's a kind of property, this virtual thing, even though it doesn't really exist anywhere but
It's,
electricity on a
it's
server.
money converted into virtual goods.
Anyone have a counterpoint to that?
I was going to say it's not real property. It's just, aspects within the game. You can't classify that as property right. So,
Do you think it matters that it was outside the rules of the game? If he'd stolen these, I don't know, like wandering up to him in a town square and shooting him in the face with a shotgun
After warning him.
I'm so sorry. After warning him. That's good to know. But if it was within the rules of the game, would that be stealing? Because he's still taking the stuff and he's not giving it back.
So, things to talk about in Fortnite. And finally, the third and last type of question we're going to talk about today is just a not pure, but fairly pure policy question. Often in the law we have these big overarching principles like autonomy or the sanctity of life or something like that. A policy question is where those two principles run smack bang into each other. For example, we have Dr. Cephalopod, who is a renowned podiatrist and was on a house call in a remote country town treating a mining billionaire's ingrown toenail, when the butler burst into the room and told him a small child had been hit by a car and was in need of medical attention. An ambulance was on its way, but it was a small rural town and it would take 30 minutes to arrive.
Dr. Applepod replied that he was being paid handsomely to treat the mining billionaire. Besides, even though he had medical training, he was vested. He had a mild blood phobia to go with it. Because we can make up anything, I think is the answer to this. And so, he would continue with his house call and not go to the child's aid because they're just trouble anyway.
So the ambulance eventually arrived, and it's okay, the child did live, we're not cruel. But he did have to have 3 fingers and 2 toes amputated. Expert medical evidence shows that had the child received medical attention immediately, there likely would have been no permanent injury. The child's parents sued Dr. Cephalopod for failing to go to the boy's aid.
So there's a question here, isn't there, about, well, are we going to force doctors to treat people, or are we going to respect their autonomy? Who would want a doctor to come to them?
I feel like that's a slightly different question.
Well, I might be saying this, but in any case, would you force a doctor to go and treat someone if it wasn't a dangerous situation?
Well, it depends on his expertise. I mean, if someone's having cardiac arrest and his specialty is podiatry, it could actually make the situation worse. You can't force someone to act outside.
Yeah, but if they did have the expertise, Sam, were you going to jump in?
Well, thinking creatively about this, I mean, you can take outside the realms of policy and apply the practice to it. You can't be registered as a medical practitioner if you are going through phobia. So you wouldn't want to force unregistered doctors to be able to treat people.
Mild blood phobia. Mild.
He's working through it, Sam, support him. Fair enough. What does everyone else think? Are we just going to leave children to die?
Questions. I feel like Chris comes down rather strongly on one side. So to give the other side of the question, let's put aside the fact that he was a doctor for the moment. Do we force everyone to go to everyone else's aid whenever someone's in need? when this person was on a road, we had no idea whether the child could be moved, trucks coming around the corner, God only knows what, one person's already been here. And there's also the general rule that we shouldn't force people to do something. And even if he is a doctor, he was on a house crew, maybe he wasn't actually on duty, so to speak, should he still be under that obligation?
Do you know many people who are obligated to do things and why we make them do it?
As far as I know, doctors are obligated to treat people in emergency. They have a duty to treat people. So he kind of willingly gives up that autonomy.
The short answer is it depends. If you guys are interested in more of that, or if you want to have a read of a case that's dealt with that area, check out that one we've cited there. Justice Kirby's involved, so you know it's going to be a good one. For the people who don't know Justice Kirby yet, I have no idea what stage of the degree you're in. He's always worth a read. So, yeah, those are our 3 examples. That was our short introductory lecture. So hopefully you guys are keen to get involved next fortnight and see you guys having a go at the first submission. I know starting, when I'm sitting down to type, I always find that start the hardest for some reason. So if you're looking for a boilerplate template as to how to start something like that, there's a rough example. Go wild. Anything else?
Before we finish though, I thought I'd just talk perhaps a little bit more about what we've seen today, because what we showed you was 3 examples of common problems you might come across in mooting. They might have seemed a little bit familiar because you've seen them in problem questions as well.
We would never take problem questions.
I don't think we actually did. They were so ridiculous, although sometimes the lecturers do have a little bit of fun with it. But you can see why these kinds of things interact, why mooting does lead towards some kinds of benefits that come out in your essays and your problem questions as well. I think what would be nice though is before I send you away or anything like that, if we just sort of meet the people who are here as well, which now I think about it might have been something nice to do at the start. But the idea of this club really is about not just us standing at the front and lecturing to you, and that's why I've been asking ridiculous questions for the last half hour or so, but instead being able to get to know each other and to learn a bit about each other as well. So at this stage, it'd be nice, I think, to just go around the room and ask people who they are, so I can know their names, and so we can know a bit more about each other. So might start from the back corner over there. We can go through. Oh, cool. Let's add something at this point. One interesting fact that people probably don't know about you.
In January, I got a chunk of my finger cut out, so it was stuck into a bar bench at work.
How? Oh, ow as well, but how?
Someone opened the fridge door and my finger was there and it just got jammed and stuck.
I did that once with a tractor. I almost lost the top of my thumb, but thankfully it stayed on.
If I knew this was going around, I wouldn't have put in the fingers amputated.
We had a lot of discussion about what are you guys going to have experience in your lives. I'm not going to actually run these slides, but we thought since you're doing a law degree, you've seen awful things already anyway. So let's go. Let's get going.
My name is Jasmine. I'm studying law history and I'm on exchange from Ireland.
Oh, welcome. How long have you been here?
Last semester, so it's time.
Oh, yeah, going through. So that welcome is a bit related. Good job. Right, jump into the back still, back row there. If I have your question. Hello.
I'm being second year. Something doesn't go on.
Cool. Well, you think of something. Let's come back to you. Let's get going.
From the obviously JP got something interesting. Plus about 3 tornadoes in the last couple months.
Just point out this doesn't necessarily have to be personal injury. I mean, they're pretty exciting, don't get me wrong. My sister fell out of a tree and almost killed herself a little while ago. She's fine, don't worry. She's not learned her lesson. But next.
I'm here, I'm doing second year JP as well. Nothing to do with toes, I lift weights.
Cool.
Oh no, I
you have to think occasionally.
yeah, so I'm Sam, this is what my name a few times, and I've been here for way too long. I'm now 6th year, and I am starting to completely separately with over 5 times twice, and this is caused all sorts of trouble with the erase internal systems. It's just crazy. So yeah.
I'm Annette. I'm in my 5th year of law school, my last semester, and I'm a 3rd year.
Hey, I'm Marion, and I need to share my first.
That was excellent time. Actually, depending on your perspective.
Sorry.
That's all right.
At least you're not distracting attention from someone else trying to introduce themselves.
Yeah, that was really well.
That was my brother. His colleague is actually married in 2 days' time. It was like last minute stuff, but everyone's stressed. And I'm in my 1st year too.
Where are they getting married?
I'm from down in Oakley, so it's happening down in Oakley.
That's great.
Going down tonight.
I'm from Florida. I'm there with JD and Chris. And something on the bed, I'm a big fan of kitchen rooms.
Cool. Okay. You.
I'm Michelle. I'm 4th year doing my honours in French, and my undergrad was in chemistry and engineering. That's going to be my first.
Yeah, that's very diverse. And in fact, what I started off doing before I realised I was a terrible engineer and much preferred to do law. Cool.
My name's Matt, I'm 2nd year JD, and I'm currently working my way through season 2 of Community.
Great show.
Yeah,
What do you want to? Well, no spoilers, but.
season 3, I think. So,
Well, I won't tell you what's coming.
My name's Richard, and I'm also a terrible engineer. So, and I'm a qualified ski instructor.
Snow or water?
So,
So before it melts, then. I'm going to pretty much keep going with these guys. I'm going to ask for
I am Cindy, and I'm here for my government degree, and I am almost always confident.
Enjoy this with the cake.
I see the synergy. Yeah.
In fact, one of the things that would be really nice to do, and I don't know if you guys have time this evening, but we're pretty keen to have a bit of a sort of social get-together dinner after this as well. So if anyone wants to go to Broadway, is there any interest there? Yeah? Guys? Cool. Good. Okay, so maybe else chooses. Let's pick up the enthusiasm. Let's set that as a homework task. Learn enthusiasm for next week. Until then, excellent. I saw at least 2 hands half raised in the air. So I'm going to have friends tonight. Right.
If you give me a little more forewarning, I'm going to come with you. I'm Anna. I'm 7th year, and I'm probably studying this. I tried reading last year for my first time, and want to get better at it. And I'm learning Indonesian. Work.
I'm Alex. I'm an identical twin, and we're 98% mirror image. One difference is our glasses.
So is that less than 98% now?
And I'm here out of curiosity because I'm an undergraduate student. I don't have a place in the JD, but that's 2 years away.
Get involved. Absolutely. No, this is a lot of fun. I mean, I found that out. I think all the other JDs have as well. Have you ever done anything where you played tricks on people as twins?
Yes, all the
Can
time.
you tell us at least one, please?
But are you actually yourself, or is this just That's actually a question I've asked my mum, because she said she couldn't tell us apart. So I could actually be my brother, and he could be me. But
Actually, I've always wondered if, you know, in that first couple of years or so, the names just switch over a few times. Yeah.
I don't know. But apparently, she tried to keep me blue and him in red. Yeah.
This has turned actually a little bit into me like a judge doing across the ground. I'll leave you alone, but thank you.
I'm Alex. I'm in my 1st year of JD. Before this, I did something completely unrelated. I studied biology in Barrow, so I've got a venomous snake handling license.
Oh, do you own any?
No, I don't. No.
What was the last one you handled?
Yeah.
Yo, I'm James. I got nothing as badass as that. I'm like a poly-sized student, so I'm not even a Blackstone member.
Don't worry about it.
Thing is that is
I'm not sure I am. I'm in vice president.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you.
I'm Stefan. I did my undergrad in Law and Society and Business Law, and I'm in my first year at the JD now. And interesting thing about me is after high school, I played basketball in Las Vegas for a few months.
Wow. That's you.
Hi, my name is Reese. I'm in my first year undergrad. I'm doing biology. I'm just with help of a friend, and I once did the trapeze, but I failed miserably, and yeah, I just stopped at one go.
Well, that's a little bit like skydiving, isn't it? You know, if at first you don't succeed, probably don't try again. Is it? Yeah.
I'm doing my final year Bachelor of Commerce, and this is my second major.
Down to the front, the final two.
My name is Wayne. I'm from Singapore. I'm doing my second year in business law commerce. Back in Singapore, I was studying fund management and administration, but I realized I really hate numbers. I'm terrible at math and statistics and everything. And I was at one point considering doing music because I do music production as well. But then I realized if you try to get into the music industry in Singapore, you're not going to make it. So
there's been a lot of pragmatism in your life.
That's a lot of luck involved.
That's certainly true as well.
So I tried to do something that I thought that I could probably do better than fund management, which I think is reasonable.
And in the morning.
I'm Barry. I'm in the second year of the JD, and I want strong leadership in my characters. And also as a programs.
You say drunkenly, would you have done
I probably would not have walked up to him and introduced myself had it not been a free bar.
Sam, do you have an interesting fact?
You pretty called me the world's best oralist. What else could I go with that?
Fine. We're going to be like that.
Hey, you've got a picture of me dressed as a pirate.
Yeah. Well, there's a story behind that, I suppose.
This really isn't.
Okay, well, I'm getting nothing else on my news. So, with that, I thought I would just ask at the end. I mean, we rushed through a lot today. I know that. Just to give you sort of a sense of what mooting looks like. This wasn't about you knowing what to do at this stage. But what would be good is, of course, as we said, to come back next time in 2 weeks and to be ready to make a couple of arguments about each of these things. We don't want it to be sort of here's exactly what the law says on this. We just want some discussion about, you know, this is why I stand for this side and why we should find this out. All of this is going to be posted both in the Facebook group that's being created and on the Blackstone website as well. I believe that the recording is still going. This is a lovely green light on my laptop. With any large gear, we'll have picked up the sound as well. That will be online, but I suppose, of course, you guys won't be as interested in the recording because you were here. So that's good. But are there any questions at the end of this? Are there any things that you want to tell us or say?
It's just one.
Yeah.
If you're on the Blackstone website, you have this link that has essay examples.
Essay examples, yeah.
But the link's broken and I can't see the pictures and all that. So I can send you guys an email.
Okay. Richard, is that you? Sorry, education.
Bureaucracy, delegating.
But is there anything about mooting just before we finish and head over to Broadway for a little bit of food?
Or any other bug reports while we're here?
But no, thank you very much for turning up, guys. I hope you got at least a little bit of a sense of what this is all about. And let's have some fun.